Hey everyone, welcome back to a new Wizard101 test room video. I thought this area had music, but I guess it ran out or something. I don't know. It's not like replaying the music, but at least we have the updated maps for each area. So I think all the maps, except the like overall map for part 2, that one's not here, but the maps are updated. So no sound. I might switch locations because I kind of like having sound in the background. But what I wanted to do in this video is take a look at all the spells because, well, not all the spells, but most of the spells. I think 4 out of the 7 that actually have changed the conditions, but all the spells have changed in the pip cost and in the damage. So I'm not going to go over every single one, but just note that they're no longer the 12 pip tree spells. They're the 11 pip tree spells. So that has probably been like the biggest change, is that they lowered the pip cost. So I think I might just run back over here and we can go on the boat back to the jungle. Maybe the jungle has music. But yeah, so the 4 I want to look at are the ones that the condition changed, which are fire, storm, myth, and life. And I think life kind of changed. It's basically the same, but it changed like a little bit. So we'll be looking at those ones. Probably should have put a mount on for this, but you know what? It's okay. Okay, there's actually music here. So I guess we'll start with the storm one because I have that one up on my storm character here. So Sign of Storm, 11 pips. All of them are going to have changed to 11 pips. That 1 pip difference is actually a big change, and I think a lot of people wanted this because it didn't really make sense for us to go from our 10 pip spells to a 12 pip. Like, we were like, what happened to the 11 pip? And they're like, you know what? We could make these the 11 pip spells because it doesn't really matter. Like, maybe at first they wanted it to be 12 because they knew it was going to have like huge damage potential with the doubling, but they made it 11 pips and they lowered the damage of all of the spells. So the storm one is now 1275, and the double will happen if the enemy has no charms. That's a lot harder than the enemy has to have 75% HP or above. So this makes the storm one more difficult in order to get that, and you have to like really be watching. I feel like it'll be tough to use this from second because if the enemy, even in PvE, if the enemy uses a blade that turn and you cast this, you're only doing 1275 base and not like, you know, 2500. So it's a big difference, and you're gonna have to be careful on that. You could use Enfeeble and try to make sure that the enemies don't have blades before you use it, but that is the condition. I feel like the condition is more in line with the other ones in terms of like you have to have something like that's fairly difficult to get this to double the damage, because before you just never hit the enemy and you could use this spell and you could get the double of the storm one, which is the highest damage one. So I feel like this change is good. It makes sense for Storm. I like the other one because it was really easy, but this one is more in line with the other ones. It makes sense. So that's the Storm one. Now the other ones I'm going to show on the screen here because I don't actually have them. But let's start with Fire. So Fire is 1200 damage, and it will double if the target has 6 or more traps. And it will also cleanse all the traps on the enemy if you get that double condition. This one is kind of like the balance one, where the balance one you need a lot of blades since balance is all about blading. Fire is about using traps, and some of their spells just put traps on it anyway. You also have the do I have any TCs? You also have the fire fuel, which can put up traps, and brimstone puts up a trap. So there's a lot of different things that can put up traps for fire, but I think this one's good. I feel like fire can definitely do this, and the it's similar to the balance one where you can put up maybe a fuel and then put up 0 pip traps, like 3 of them, and you'll be at 6. Or you can do 2 fuels, or you could, I don't know, hit with something that puts up a trap and then put up fuel, something like that. But regardless, it doesn't even have, oh, you could also put up fuel and then put up elemental trap. That'll work. That's 1 pip. I don't actually have that on this character. Do I have any TC elemental traps? But you could do that, and that would be 3 traps. Yeah, or spirit trap. So you put this up, put up fuel. That's 6. You're done. That took you 3 pips. Took you 3 pips, and then you gotta wait for 11, and you can do that. Because it doesn't have to be fire traps. It can be any traps. Very similar to the bounce one. Maybe a little bit more difficult. I mean, it's pretty much the same, right? Because 1 pip and 2 pips are almost the same thing. I mean, if you have power pips, it's basically the same thing. But it's only different if you have a new pip and you use Spirit Blade, then you're, not wasting a power pip to do that. But that's the fire one. I feel like it makes sense for fire. It's way better than the other condition, which was have 2 dots up at the same time and then hit. So I like that better. Moving on, we've got the myth one. So the myth one is deal 1150 damage, and it will double if the target is stunned. That's the same as before. Or if the caster has 3 or more stun blocks. And if you double this, then it will remove all the stun blocks on you. So the only thing that really changed here is the stun block condition. Instead of just having 2 stun blocks, they're now requiring you to have 3 of them, which means you can't just cast one 0-pip spell, and have 2 stun blocks and be able to cast this. You need to have cast stun block twice, or have gotten stunned and have your own stun block and then use this. So that's kind of where this one's coming from. Basically, it's not too difficult though, because you could cast 2 stun blocks with 0 pips. So that one's still not too bad. Or you can just, use this when the enemy's stunned. That's also another way. Thing is though, you got to make sure that you don't get stunned, because it'll remove a stun block, and then you won't get the double damage if you have less than 3. So something to keep in mind, but I feel like the myth one is not too difficult in order to get to cast. Maybe at the end of this video I should go through and like rate all of them, like my number 1 to number 7. I don't know. I might do that. But we've got one more. So this is the one that hasn't really changed too much. This is the life one. So the life one is heal 1100 to a target plus 300 over time. And that 300 over time is to all friendly people, all friendly wizards. And it will double that if the target you healed has 25% HP or less. And it will also double that 300 over time on everyone. So you will heal everyone for 600 over time. You'll heal the target for 2200. And that's where this one's at. Still, this one, I don't feel like I'll use it too much, even with the overtime healing. The overtime healing is good. It makes this better. But I feel like I could get by with other life spells on my life wizard. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of a battle or a time when I would even put this in my deck as a life wizard, because 11 pips, I'm never going to get 11 pips on my life wizard. It's just never going to happen. So I don't think I'll use this on my life, even with the changes. But it is there for people that want it, and it does double the initial heal and the overtime. So I like that it doubles the overtime as well. That's pretty cool, but still doesn't make it the best, and I don't think I'll use it. So I guess we'll just go through all of these and kind of come up with the ones that I feel like are the best and the ones that I feel like are still the worst. Maybe that changed. I mean, it feels like it changed a little bit, but let me go ahead and make a list quick, and then I'll go through it with you guys. Okay, I'm back. I came up with a list of my 7 in a row from worst to best. We'll start with worst. Number 7 and number 6 are interchangeable, and I feel like I already had these at the bottom of my list before the changes, and they're still there because I still feel like these spells are kind of bad. But here we go. Number 7, I've got Scion of Ice as the worst one. They changed it from making you have full health to double it to 90% health, and I still feel like you can get hit one time and not be able to cast this spell. So it is better than what it was, but 90%, I mean, I guess they're going off of the fact that Ice has a lot of health, so they can get hit maybe once or twice and still be above 90, but it depends where you are. If you're in a difficult fight, you could get hit once and be below 90%. So I still feel like that one's kind of bad, so I'm putting it at the end. Number 6, I have Sign of Death, and these are the two that I think I already said that they were some of the worst ones, and they're still there. This one is you have to have 33% or less health for yourself or for the enemy. And the only way I really see this being used is if you somehow have 11 pips and you're about to die because you're less than 33% of your health, and you use this as a big hit to heal back. You're probably not going to use this if the enemy is below 33% of their health, because they're going to be close to being dead, and you could use basically anything to kill besides this. You wouldn't use an 11 pip spell to, deal that much damage. There's probably not that much damage left if they're at 33% or less. But this one I still feel like is kind of hard to get that condition to go, and I feel like ice is also difficult to get that condition. So I'm gonna completely base this list off the conditions and how difficult it is to get it to go, to get it to proc that second condition. So ice and death at the low tier of the spells. For number 5, I have Sign of Life. I just don't really like this spell that much. I don't feel like it's gonna get too much use, and it's just like the condition's alright, but just the fact that it's a lot of pips for what you get and everything for a heal, I feel like it's plus you also need to heal to get like the full value of the spell. You need to heal someone that's almost dead or already dead. So it's a good spell for healing someone that is already dead in the battle, but otherwise you probably wouldn't really use this. And you also have to have someone die and have saved up 11 pips for yourself. What are you gonna do? Be like, oh, I got Sign of Life, just wait for like 3 more turns and I can heal you. I don't think that's gonna fly. So yeah, Sign of Life I have at number 5. Number 4, I have Sign of Storm, because I feel like the Storm one is a lot worse than it was. I had Sign of Storm at number 1, and my reason for this is I just feel like anyone can put up a blade, and people blade a lot. In PvE, enemies blade all the time. In PvP, people can blade like crazy, and this spell, you never will get the double if you have a blade. Like, someone could use the like elemental blade and never use the ice blade, but that still counts as a blade, and they would have the blade on them, and the only way to remove that is if you enfeeble it somehow. So you would have to use like bugs or something to remove it, or Leviathan or something to remove it, and then you're gonna use your 11 pip spell. I don't know, probably not. So Storm is a lot worse than it was. Very situational when you can use that. You need to make sure that you're hitting into an enemy that doesn't have any blades, because otherwise it's not worth it. You might as well have just used Storm Owl. So that one you gotta be careful. Fire, I like fires. It makes more sense, but in these top 3, I kind of, compared all of them, and I was like, okay, these ones are all pretty similar, but which ones are the easiest and which ones are more difficult? I feel like fire is more difficult to get the traps in order to get 6 of them. Number 2 I have is balance. It's 6 blades. Same concept, but I feel like putting blades on is easier than putting traps on, even though they're very similar. So that's number 2 and 3. And then number 1 I have is myth, because Sign of Myth, all you gotta do is put up 2 stun blocks, which cost 0 pips, and you're good. And then you have 4 on you, and you can even get stunned 1 time, and it'll block the stun, and you can still cast this thing. So 2 stun blocks and you're good to go. So I feel like myth is really easy, or you just hit when the enemy is stunned. So that could also be a thing. You could use the 0 pip stun, and then use the spell next turn if you have enough pips. So I feel like the myth one's pretty good. But that's just going off the conditions. The damage has all been reduced too. So there you go. That is it for the video. I just wanted to make sure I went through all of the spells and let you guys know what the changes were and how I think like the ranking of the spells is now. I might use this spell on my Storm. I don't know. It's better that it's 11 pips, but I still feel like it's something I might put in for certain fights like Medulla, and hope that Medulla doesn't have a blade. But yeah, there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like on it. Subscribe for more Wizard videos in the future, and I'll see you guys next time.